Good morning. This is Professor Menton, and today what I want to do is go over a problem in multiple linear regression. And so the first thing you have to do, of course, is you have to have a data set with which to work. And what I have here is a data set, and this, by the way, is a very kind of a real world example because a lot of times when you get a data set, say you have people that are working with you or for you or whatever, and you ask them to give you, for example, ID, age, gender, educational level, income, years experience, job satisfaction. If you ask them to give you that, a lot of times they will not put this in a form that you can work with on Excel. You have to then manipulate the data once you get it. So as I look through this data, I see that we have each one of these is separated by a comma. And because we have this separation with a comma, or if we had a tab, it'd be the same thing. We can very easily convert that in Excel. So with this data, I'm just going to highlight it all and Control C, and then open up an instance of Excel and Control V. And notice I get it back the same way that I copied it. Okay, it didn't fix it for me, so I have to fix it myself. So I'm going to come down through here and and it'll only do, by the way, you can only do one column at a time. You're doing multiple rows, obviously. I'm doing rows 1 through 10 or 11 here, I should say. And so that part is not an issue. But columns, it can only do one column at a time. So that's good because all you have to do is grab this first column, come over here to your data tab, and where it says over here text to columns, click on that. And is the file delimited? Well, yes, it is. It's delimited because I have commas separating each one of these variables. So delimited is the correct choice here, and it kind of shows me down here what I'm getting, and I go next. And normally this shows up as tab and comma, and I haven't selected it before then. So I'm going to just click off of the tab in this case so that I just show that it's comma delimited. It could be space delimited. It could be semicolon delimited. Because you notice a lot of times when you do emails are oftentimes semicolon delimited. So if you want to have those in a separate group, you would have to go through and say, click on the semicolon side of it. So I don't need to do anything else here. When I look down here, it looks like it's going to put these in the right columns for me. Okay, so I'm going to go next. In general, is fine. And finish. And when I do that, notice that I no longer see all of these commas in here, and it's actually put each one of these into its own column correctly. So now what I want to do is I'm going to highlight them, and you wouldn't have to do this necessarily. I just like to do it because I want to have the data presented in a little bit more organized way for me, just for me. It may not be this for you. So I'm going to click on my Home tab after I've highlighted each one of these columns and come over here and I'm going to just say center it. And for me, that just gives it a cleaner look. Okay. And so if I look at this data, what I see with this data is that I have a bunch of text items. So gender is an M or an F, and then their educational status. And by the way, I probably want to go ahead and spread this out a little bit. So if I just highlight these columns, come at the very end and double click, then I can put them into the columns in ways that it exactly matches the amount of space that I need. But when I look at these and I think about these variables, what am I really trying to explain? I'm trying to explain how these variables impact income. And if you think about it for a second, would we expect somebody with a PhD to earn more than somebody with a bachelor's? We would expect that, right? And maybe somebody with a bachelor's might earn more than somebody with a high school education. Okay? That's not always true, but in this case, the data are distributed in such a way that that is in fact true. At least for the ones that I looked at, it is. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to explain which, or maybe even all of these variables have an impact on salary or income. So what I want to do, because I know that I'm going to work my way toward income, and you don't really have to do this, but eventually you're going to have to do it anyway, or you're going to have to, if not do it this way, you're going to have to manipulate your columns in such a way that you can get to these numbers like this. I'm going to just highlight this and do a Control X. And over here, I'm going to come and Control V for Victor, and then come back over here and eliminate this column just to clean the data up. I'm not done. I still want to know how many of these or which ones of these impact salary the most. Okay. And if all of these items or which of these items actually impact it, which of these have a corollary effect. Okay. So the first thing I want to do though is, because I'm going to use Excel's regression tool, I have to make sure that these are not in text form. They can't be in text form. Okay. So what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to um, transition them from any kind of text to a number. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do this. But for right now, I know that I'm going to have to move this one to a number. So I'm going to point to this and right click and insert. And I know that I'm going to have to do the same thing here. Point to it, right click, insert. And finally, right here. So I'm going to point to this one, right click, and insert. Okay, so now I've inserted some columns here that I can transition these into numerics. Now in this case, I only have 10 of these guys. So I'm probably not going to write a formula for it in the real world, right? I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to make this a 1 and the next one a 2. If I decide that I'm going to indicate that a male is a 1 and a female is a 2, right? But if I had 500 rows of data, obviously doing it that way is not the way that I'd want to do it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a formula to do it with. Now, this is going to get a little bit complicated because once I do the formula, it's going to reference back to this M or this F. Now, again, if I have 10 of these, I'm not going to even do this formula. I'm just going to come through and I'm going to assign a 1 to this one, a 2 to this one, a 1 to this one, a 2 to this one, and so forth, right? Okay, but I'm assuming that you're going to have potentially a data set with maybe hundreds of rows, and if you are, it wouldn't make any sense for you to go through and do them one at a time, okay? So I'm going to just retype the word gender here, and I'm going to come and I'm going to put an if statement in here that says if this is an M, then make it a 1. And if it is an F, make it a 2. All right. So I only need a single if statement here because I have a binary choice. It's either an M or an F. So I'm going to say equal if and open parentheses. Then I'm going to point to this case C2. And so if C2 is equal to, and I have to open quotes, an M and close quote, comma, then That's what that says. Then give me a 1. Otherwise, give me a 2. So I don't really have to write a statement about the F because I only have a binary choice here. If I had 3 or 4 items, and we'll have, when we get over here to the job satisfaction, we have 3, and the educational level we have more. So that's going to require us to have nested ifs that you'll see here in a moment. And so I'm closing my parentheses, hitting the enter button, and I'm going to come down and I'm going to point this little square down at the bottom and double click it. And then I'm going to go back and always, always, always check several items in your data to make sure that it did it right. So if I come down here and I look at M, yeah, I've got a 1. And an F, I got a 2. And an F up here is a 2. And so I'm going to check to make sure that everything that I'm looking at there is correct. Now, if I have 500, I'm not going to check 500, obviously. I'm just going to go through and systematically check, 5 or 10 of these to make sure that it did what I wanted it to do correctly. Okay? Now I'm going to come to education level. And again, I'm doing this because this is the way you sometimes get data. You don't always get data in the perfect form. You get data. In this case, the perfect form for me would be if it's a male, give me a 1. If it's a female, give me a 2. But they didn't do that. They gave me a text entry. And if it's a text entry, now I have to go back and convert it. If I want to use Excel's regression, I have to go back and convert it to an integer. Okay? So in this case, when I look down through these items here, I have actually 4 different delimiters. I have high school, bachelor, master, PhD. And it's very important that whatever I have in this cell here, or these cells, that I make sure that I'm using the same syntax or the same spelling. So it says bachelor, it doesn't say bachelors, it doesn't say masters. It says bachelor, master, high school. Look at the way that high school is listed here. Okay? So I'm just going to go through and do it systematically. So if it's a high school, if they have a high school diploma, then I'm going to give them a 1. If they have a bachelor, they'll get a 2, a master's a 3, and a PhD a 4. Okay? So I'm going to have a nested if in this case. So equal if, open parentheses, and I'm going to point again to E2 in this case. If E2 is equal to, open parentheses, open quotes, high school, close quotes, comma 1. Otherwise, now I have to have a second if statement because I just don't have a binary choice here. I have choices for 3 other different items. So I'm going to have to go through and change this to a multiple nested if. Okay. So right here, I'm going to say if, open parentheses, and the same reference, in this case, to E2 is equal to, open quotes, bachelor, close quotes, comma 2. So here's what I'm saying. If E2 is equal to high school, then give it a 1. Otherwise, if E2 is equal to bachelor, give it a 2. And then otherwise, in this case, I need another if. If, open parentheses, E2 is equal to, open quotes, master, close quotes, comma, then give me a 3. Otherwise, it's a 4. I don't have to do another if here because I've came to the end of my data. In other words, if I had 7 items, I could do 7 items in an if, but I think you're only allowed 8. So fortunately, it doesn't go that far with us. So we can do the nested if here, and there are other ways to do it. All right. But this is the way that I have done it for many years. And most of the time, you don't go past just 3 or 4 ifs, so it's usually not an issue at all. But just be aware that there are limits to how many if statements you can nest. Okay, so you got to close all of the parentheses. So if I open 1, 2, 3, I have to have 3 closings here. If I don't, a lot of times Excel is smart enough that it'll just go through and say, hey, you missed one. Is this a formula that you actually intended? We're going to add another um, closing of the parentheses. If it does do that, just go back and check and make sure that you closed them. And in this case, apparently I did because I didn't get an error statement. And if I look over here, I see that bachelor is in fact a 2, right? Because if E2 is equal to bachelor, then it's a 2. And so now I'm going to come over here and find my little square at the right-hand lower bottom and double click. And now I'm going to go down and I'm going to check. Well, here's a master and it's a 3. That's correct. Here's a high school. It's a 1. That's correct. Where's my PhD? Here's a PhD and it's a 4. So apparently I did them all correctly. Because now what I've done is I've substituted a text entry for a numeric entry. Okay, so I'm good to go. I've got one more to do, job satisfaction. I'm going to go about it the same way. I'm going to convert low, medium, and high to 1, 2, and 3. Now, this is perfect. I mean, this is completely arbitrary. Okay. If you wanted to use 0, 1, 2, you could do that. And most computer scientists would probably opt for 0, 1, and 2. But in this case, I'm just going to call them 1, 2, and 3, low, medium, and high. All right, so equal if. And again, I'm going to point to H2. And if H2 is equal to, open quotes, low, close quote, comma, then I want to give it a 1. Otherwise, if H2 is equal to, open quotes, medium, close quotes, comma 2, otherwise 3. Because I only have 3 choices here. Okay, so I don't have to have another if statement to talk about the 3 because it's the otherwise. I don't have any other choices. I don't have a choice that would give us a 4. I don't have a choice that would give us a 0. So now all I have to do is close my parentheses. And there are 2 of them because I opened a 1, 2 if statement, so I have to close 2. And high is a 3. Hey, it seems to have worked. Come down here, double click. And I'm going to check each one. There's a low, gives me a 1, and there's a medium that gives me a 2, and so you always want to check your data because if you misclassified something and when you wrote your little program or your little formula, if you did one of them wrong, you want to make sure you catch it. So you would want to, if you had 8 items, you'd want to at least check 8 to make sure that every one of those was showing up correctly. And I would probably check maybe 16, maybe even 24, because I'd want to make sure that going down through the data, especially if you have 500 or 600 rows, that they're coming through consistently. All right. So what I need now is I need this column and this column and this column. I don't need these other the male, female, and the text entries. Okay. All right. So here's what I want to do. I have a little bit of a problem because if I eliminate this column, if I eliminate it, then there's no reference here to get to the 1. And if I eliminate that column, I wind up with something crazy here. Like it might just take all 2s or something. Who knows? Okay. And I can't have that. All right. So what I want to do is I want to copy these, but I want to copy them as I want to copy them as values only, which is exactly, in this case, exactly what I would have done if I just went through and assigned them. Just because I only have 10 of them, I probably wouldn't write all these formulas. Why write them? But again, if you had, I'm assuming you might have a couple of 300 of these things, okay? In this case, I don't, but I still now have a problem because I did it based on formula. And if I have a formula referencing something over here, and I eliminate this something over here, I get either an error message or I get crazy data, okay? And I don't want that, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's see if I've got anything on sheet one. I don't know why that did that way. So I'm going to actually copy selected items over here, but when I copy them, I'm going to copy the ones that I have changed or used a formula for. I'm going to copy those as values. So I didn't use these first two. I didn't make any changes to those, so I can go Control C and come into sheet one and do Control V, and I've copied those two. Okay? Now what I want to do is I want to go back over to sheet two and I want to grab this one. So I'm going to go like this, Control C, come back over to sheet one, and I'm going to go right click and I'm come up here and I'm going to find values and click the values. Now you notice when I point to this, there's no formula behind it. If I go back over here to sheet two and I point to, and I'm going to escape that, but come over here and I point to any of these, what you're going to see is that I have a formula behind that, but when I've copied it as a value over here, I no longer have that problem. It's because there's no formula behind this. This is just a one and a two and so forth, right? Let's go back over to sheet two and see what the next one is. On the next one, I just need these guys, but I just need them as their numeric values. I do not need the formula. I'm going to highlight it, Control C it, go back over to sheet one in this case, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to come over here to values and post the value. Next one, years experience. I'm going to escape that, of course. Years experience is fine. Just going to Control C, come back over to sheet one, and I'm going to do Control V. And again, I probably need to come up here to the top and, but I probably would wait until I was all done before I did this. But this shows you how it's moving over. So there's your gender. And I could go and I could recheck a couple of those if I wanted to. Like I might go back here and check 9 and see whether 9 is in fact a male with a PhD with 12 years experience. And so here's your male, PhD, 12 years experience. Okay, so we're good. Job satisfaction, Control C. And I'm going to come back over here, right click and paste the values because again, I don't want to have the any formula behind it. And now I don't. When I point to it, it's just a value, right? The last one, of course, is the income. And I've got to escape that one. Highlight the income, Control C, back over to sheet one, Control V, and now I've got everything. And again, I'm going to come back through because it probably is just more my preference than anything else, but I want to see them in the middle like that. Okay, so now I can actually take sheet two if I wanted to and get rid of it. I don't really need it anymore. And in fact, in this case, it just muddies the water if it's still there. However, you may want to keep it just for reference purposes to see what in fact you did assign this one to or whatever. I mean, again, you could have, if you had a lot of columns and rows and things like that, you might want to keep this just so that you could say, well, this is how I did it. Okay. But I don't really need it at this point. But again, I expect that all of these things that I'm looking at here could be somehow explanatory for these guys right here. Now, I do want to go through here and um, add some commas in there and get rid of since they're all um, since they're all whole numbers, there aren't any cents or anything like that. I'll just get rid of those extra two zeros. You don't have to. Just whatever you feel more comfortable looking at. But I do like to put commas in there because if you had, you know, 700,000